So, welcome, Pam. I'm just so grateful, so delighted to be here with you. You're one of the most extraordinary astrologers that I know. Your ability to navigate these realms, to bring in the higher dimensional reality. So, it's not just talking about planetary energies, but allowing them a voice, you know, through your analysis, through your mythological content, and just making it relevant to this
Thank
time.
you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm so grateful to be here with you and so grateful to interact. And so my thought was we could start with some astrological analysis. So there's Pluto in Aquarius, there's Uranus and Sedna in Gemini just entering today, or at least the Uranus part, which is so synchronistic that we have this conversation happening. And then, of course, we have Neptune and Saturn conjunct in Aries. So, all forming a minor grand trine. What are these energies? What are they here for? And how can we participate? And then go into a little bit of geological and galactic analysis. What are these larger cycles? How can we um, anticipate and work with them? And then maybe the third part could be an analysis of the evolutionary journey that we're on collectively and how that all fits because it's an intelligent, conscious universe. And that's who we are as part of the universe. We bring that intelligence through. And the more we can understand these realities and give voice to what wants to be spoken, the more we participate in this birthing process.
Yeah.
And maybe after that, we could maybe go into a bit of a meditation, calling on these energies as forces. So when you talk about Uranus or Neptune or Pluto or Sedna or Saturn, they're forces acting through us, and we're giving them a voice. So we connect with the planetary self, we connect with the galactic self, and then let them speak through. So how's that sound?
Great. Yes, wonderful.
All right.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so please go ahead. Go ahead with some astrological analysis of these times.
Yes, it really is. It was very, very remarkable the times we are in because we, between now and April 2026, all of the outer planets are going to be moving into new signs. And because they all had different lengths of orbit, Saturn, 29.5 year cycle, Uranus, 84-year cycle, Neptune, 165-year cycle, Pluto, 248-year cycle, it is mathematically remarkable that they're all changing sign within such a very, very short period of time from
And Sedna
2027.
as well.
And Sedna too, yeah, and Homer.
Yes.
It's the dwarf plants as well.
Mm.
If we include them, so it's very remarkable, and so that means that the planets are coming into a very distinct configuration. If I just take Pluto that moved into Aquarius in November 2024, it is now trine to Uranus, which today, 7th of July, as we're recording, has just moved into Gemini. And Uranus has just come to conjunct Sedna. That will be within 22 minutes of exactitude in September and exact in May next year. So
Mm.
that is a trine. And the seed point of any aspect, any geometry between planets is always the conjunction. And they were conjunct in 1965, 1966, and that was an amazing period. You know, that was the time of the hippies and peace protests, anti-war, love communities being set up, people growing their own food, and incredibly rich music, art, culture. I mean, it was known that everybody who lived through the 60s or knows anything about them knows how incredibly creative and rich they were. And that still endures today, the
Mm.
creativity from that time. So we are now coming into a blossoming, the
Mm.
trine
Mm.
of that seed point.
Yeah.
And then at the midpoint of that trine, we have Neptune, which already moved into Aries on the 30th of March. and Saturn, which moved into Aries on the 24th of May. So they're at the midpoint. And they have moved on to 0 degrees of Aries, which is the very first degree of the zodiac. I call it the creator degree, the degree with the greatest potential of any degree in the entire zodiac. Now, every 500 years or so, Neptune comes to the midpoint of Pluto and Uranus. But it doesn't do that at 0 of Aries, the most
Oh,
potent degree
that's
of the zodiac.
that's extraordinary that this is what's happening now.
Incredible. And with Saturn, it's just phenomenal. So that configuration, I've gone back sort of thousands of years in my research, and I
Mm,
haven't found a time, and Ray Merriman, the wonderful astrologer, also said he has never found a time when we've had that configuration with Neptune and Saturn at
mm,
the Aries point. So that really says to us, apart from all the bigger cycles we'll be talking about, that this is an extraordinary time of rebirth for
mm,
humanity. And
mm,
for the next few months, with the planets all in their new signs at the moment, this is a time of rehearsal for humanity, of what we want to become, and in 2026 and moving forwards, and also being very cognizant of the seeds we are sowing
mm.
for ourselves, our new self, our new life, and the earth, which will start to blossom in early 2026. And the reason I say start to blossom is because as of September, the outer planets then begin to retrograde back into their previous signs. So Saturn retrogrades back into Pisces on the 1st of September. Um, Uranus starts to retrograde back into Taurus on the 8th of November, and Neptune retrogrades back into Pisces on the 22nd of November.
Mm.
And then early next year, Jan, Feb, Saturn and Neptune move fully into Aries, holding hands exactly together at 0 of Aries, 44 minutes on the 20th of February. And Uranus moves into Gemini fully on the 26th of April.
And that's
So
also
those,
tied in with the solar eclipse, isn't it?
yes, yes, super powerful, incredibly powerful time. Yes, well done, Kiara. So then we are fully with all of the outer planets and their new cycles for the rest of those cycles.
Mm.
So this is rehearsal, this is planting seeds, this is dreaming in. What do we want to envisage? What do we want to dream in for ourselves, for humanity, and for the earth? What do we want to dream in?
Absolutely. I mean, as you're speaking, I'm just noticing my heart just opening so wide. It's like this is a conscious awakening. We are part of this awakening. Um, and the fact that we're here and participating in this rather than just passively observing it is so important.
I think that's really important. Our level of consciousness has shifted so much
Mm,
um, from the past that we are very aware. We are so much more aware of what we're thinking and feeling and how we're moving around day to day, and we are learning our mastery.
yes.
Saturn, Neptune, 0 of Aries, we are learning our mastery of our thinking, our mastery of our feeling, in order that we can better create our reality. And what's fascinating as well, Kiara, and I'm sure you know this, got a very good grasp of astrology, but the seed point for Neptune and Pluto, their last conjunction, was 1891 to 1893. That was when Max Planck was inventing or discovering quantum physics.
Right.
uh, he was kind of discarding the previous physics that had been big kind of polystyrene balls that represented atoms that came together in molecules, the stuff we learned at school, and saying, no, no, it's something much more ethereal than that. And we have influence as observers on what we are manifesting. So that was the real beginning
Mm.
of quantum physics well over 100 years ago. We are now at another positive development of that with the sextile between Neptune and Pluto. So with each step in that, because it's to do with the paranormal, the spiritual, with each step in that, it becomes more ethereal
Yeah.
and
And
less
like,
dense.
Yeah, and one aspect of this also, a relatively minor aspect, is the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. It's like, Saturn representing form, Neptune the formless, and the dance between the form and the formless. Because this is really the dance of creation. It's quantum entanglement in its highest form. And I think Zach Bush talked about this, right? Where he spoke about
Yeah, beautiful.
how we're oscillating back and forth between the form and the formless like a million times a second. And
Yeah,
this is how
it
creation
phenomenal.
happens. Yeah.
It phenomenal. And what's fascinating about that, Kiara, again, the seed point for the Saturn Neptune conjunction, the last time that happened was in
Mm.
November 1989. And I was in,
Oh,
that was so literal.
unbelievable.
I was in Berlin when
Yes.
they were literally demolishing the Berlin Wall. And Capricorn, of course, is ruled by Saturn. And its structure, its walls, its borders, its boundaries. And all the young people had hammers and
Mm.
axes, were literally in front of my eyes demolishing the Berlin Wall, which was the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union
Mm.
as it was then. And I actually bought a chunk of wall, and I've still got it in the house somewhere. So that was such a dissolution, Neptune, of form, of wall, of border, and the unification of East and West Germany at that time. So, and now of course we have another Saturn Neptune conjunction, and they are historically very linked to the history of Russia, the redefinition of Russia. So this year and or next year, when it becomes exact next year, we're going to see some development in the redefinition or new boundaries for Russia, or could be change in leadership, because of course Putin was born in 1952 with a Saturn Neptune conjunction in his birth chart.
Interesting.
So, Xi Jinping was born in 1953 with that same Saturn Neptune conjunction in his birth chart. So it's going to be very interesting for the Russian and Chinese leaders as well.
So there's an ascendancy somehow because of BRICS and because of that alliance. Meanwhile, the US is going through its Pluto return, or has
Yeah,
just passed through it. So, whatever that is about, the karmic cycles, the disintegration of uh, patriarchal and structures that have been instrumental in creating slavery, mental and emotional and actual. So, this is
absolutely.
all collapsing now. As
It's you know it's really wonderful, and I think people who have a Saturn Neptune conjunction in their birth chart, those are people who were born in 1952 or 1953 or 1989,
Mm,
will in some way be called into some form of leadership or step forwards in some way, and not in a kind of old fashioned, I'm telling you what to do type
mm,
leadership, a sort of inspirational Neptune and inspirational leadership from this point on going forwards to lead people, or to bring in new ideas to society, birth new ideas, zero of Aries,
mm,
um, into the collective to help us move forwards in a much more loving, beautiful way.
mm. Absolutely, yes. So, Pam, speak a little bit about Sedna because this fascinates me. There's so many astrologers that speak about the other planets in our solar system, but Sedna, the mythology of this, the periodicity and how it aligns with galactic cycles and geomagnetic cycles. This is fascinating to me. It feels like this is like it's a reflection of our evolutionary journey, the metamorphosis that we're actually going through as a species and as a planet.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we have so much more to discover about Sedna, Kiara. We are absolutely at the first whisper of understanding Sedna, but in myth, there are variations on the myth. But sort of in short, the core of all the variations is that Sedna lived in the Arctic wastes. She had an inappropriate marriage. She begged her father to come and rescue her, which he did in his kayak, and they set off. But a storm blew up, and in order to save himself, her father threw his daughter Sedna out of the canoe, out of the kayak. And in desperation,
Mm.
she clung on to the sides of the kayak, and he chopped her fingers off. So
Oh,
the patriarchy does not shine, not come well out of this. So she floated down to the deep Arctic and became, she transmuted into a sea goddess and apparently still exists there as a sea goddess. And sailors have to ask her for safe passage when they're crossing those seas. But her fingers also transformed or went through a metamorphosis into these beautiful sea creatures of whales and turtles and dolphins. And they are very high dimensional. If we follow the work of Joan Ocean and her beautiful
I
filming
know
work,
that.
oh, beautiful, wonderful, wonderful woman. And she talks about them being 15th dimensional,
Mm.
doesn't she? So
Yeah.
they are helping to lead us into this new consciousness and this new earth. And so that's the myth of Sedna. So she's very much about a physical metamorphosis as well as this massive shift in consciousness. And what I find fascinating is we have this wonky triangle that will exist certainly over the next 3 years of we have Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius, and that is in aspect to Sedna. It's actually a trine to 1 degree of Gemini, where Sedna is, and Sedna is in a quincunx to another dwarf planet called Haumea. And
Mm.
Haumea is very much about regeneration and change of state as well, metamorphosis, because she's linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility. She could birth babies from all over her body. She could reverse her age from an old crone to a young maiden. She was said to birth the 8 islands of Hawaii from her fire goddess aspect of the myth. So she's about this kind of eruptive regeneration. And the fact that she can change form as well, I
Mm.
think is has parallels clearly to Sedna as well. So Pluto is the planet of transformation. Haumea is also linked to transformation, but a deeper change of state. And Sedna is linked to an even deeper
Wow.
change of state. And there's another aspect of Sedna's myth which not many people know, which is that in part of her myth, her partner, Sedna's partner, they lived on an island as part of Hawaii, and her partner took some wild bananas from the land. And there was a very autocratic ruler at the time. And even though there were wild bananas, growing on the island, he said that Sedna's partner had to be put to death for taking the wild bananas. And although the autocratic ruler had a whole army behind him, Sedna somehow, by her prayers to her spirit guides, calling in angels and spirit help, and with the help of the community, they overcame the autocratic ruler and saved the life of her partner. So, this is a very big statement about the community and coming together as a collective in community, and also about calling in your spiritual help.
Mm.
You can overcome top down patriarchal
Wow.
leadership.
So many parallels to these times. What we call the deep state or whatever name we want to give that. There's a very patriarchal, very um, discriminatory, very sadistic organization. And its time has come. It's all dissolving and it's happening quickly and powerfully and inevitably in ways that, we don't even expect. It's like suddenly before we know it, the power of those forces is collapsing.
Yeah.
I'm
And
also
will continue
curious.
to, I think, quite rapidly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also curious, Pam, when you talk about Sedna and what was it, Hayway,
Homer,
Amaya,
Homer,
how,
Haumea. Yeah.
how this might connect with Chiron, because Chiron is a similar archetype as the wounded healer. Is Chiron linked through transits?
It's not
Aspects?
linked exactly in transits, although it will be, looking down the lines of 27, 28, it will be picked up. But it's right at the end of Aries right now, kind of 26 of Aries. And the myth of Chiron, of course, is the wounded healer, which many people know that he was injured by a poisoned arrow and he couldn't heal himself. So he became a master astrologer, a herbalist. He developed a lot of the alternative modalities, and in helping to heal other people, he became a master teacher as well of those alternative therapies.
Yeah.
And in healing other people, and with the help of his wife Chariclo, he ultimately healed himself.
Mm.
but Chiron is also, when we have Chiron transits, there's very often a feeling of it's the one who doesn't fit, because Chiron orbits between Saturn and Uranus. And there's often a feeling, if you have Chiron transits, there's a feeling of injustice, that you've been excluded from something, you don't fit in the normal mainstream, and there's a feeling of injustice.
Mm.
Now, Chiron is currently, Chiron is the maverick in that way, the one that doesn't fit. But currently, she's tightly conjunct Eris, another dwarf planet who is the warrior sister of Mars.
Mm.
And that whole archetype is about Eris was the only one who wasn't invited to the wedding on Mount Olympus. But
Mm.
she's so feisty, she turned up anyway and created mayhem because she threw a golden apple into the group of goddesses and said, for the fairest. And they all fought amongst each other as to who was the fairest. And that was said to
Oh, that
allegedly.
was the beginning of the Trojan War with Helen of Troy and that whole story.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
so she is said in her archetype to stand for justice,
Mm.
equality, to represent people who've been excluded from normal society, a little bit like Chiron's on the periphery, the one who, the maverick. And so they are very tightly together right now.
Mm.
And so, that is very instructive. They're being aspected actually, later in July. And Eris, I believe, is becoming stationary. I think she's stationary retrograde towards the end of this month.
Mm.
And therefore, her symbolism will be amplified in terms of everybody needs a voice. Everybody needs to be heard, particularly those people who've been
Mm.
just shoved to the periphery of society.
So
That's going to be really
sovereignty is a keyword.
100%. And actually, Aries, zero of Aries, Saturn, Neptune, all about sovereignty,
Yeah, yeah.
reclaiming our power,
Mm.
living from the inside out. Yeah.
Sovereignty and revolution, with
Yeah.
Uranus being there as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, so we're creating a revolution of consciousness. So we move out of hierarchy, out of top-down systems. Even the idea of duality, where we separate ourselves from each other, in and out, up and down, all of that is being somehow transmuted. And going back to Sedna, that transmutation energy, the metamorphosis energy. We are entering into the cocoon. We are entering into that chaotic mess, which is the fertile soup of life within the cocoon, which then emerges as a butterfly. Once you've
100%. I
found
think we're in the mush right now. I think we're in the mush right now,
the
Kiara. And it was fascinating talking to Richard Rudd, who, of course, is the founder of Gene Keys and the author of Gene Keys and runs a kind of modern day mystery school, because what he said was very interesting. In his system, which I don't fully understand, but in his system, on the 30th of January this year, Pluto crossed gate 41. And what that did was trigger something he called methiolon. And methiolon is the beginning of a creation of a genetic mutation in humanity, which is going to
Oh,
upgrade us. And he said that would take until really the end of 2027 to complete the beginning of the genetic mutation. So, it's not all going to be done, it'll go on for years and years and years and years, but that is going to complete the beginning point. And of course, Uranus conjunct Sedna now, I see as the ignition point of the biological metamorphosis as well as the spiritual metamorphosis.
yes. That biological metamorphosis is so key to this evolution. And I've been following the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, or these mystic yogis from India in the last century. And their whole work is about this metamorphosis, the new humanity, a new species that's emerging. And it's a biological species, not a spiritual transformation, although it includes that. It's also a biological transformation. It's literally a new species, what the Theosophists refer to as the sixth root race, the seventh root race, is Homo luminous. And then further down the line is Homo universalis. And then it's not just humans as a species, it's the entire planet as an organism, Gaia luminous, and then it's the entire universe. This consciousness of unity consciousness rippling out across space and time, across dimensions, and this cosmo luminous. So what they call the seventh universe. So it's like rather than going through cycles of death and rebirth, which is how we have experienced reality so far, which is still a dualistic kind of reality, we bypass that because consciousness can be fully embodied now within matter, within these bodies, within physical reality, not just higher realities, bringing it down into physical reality, transforming physical matter itself to become a vehicle for consciousness. So consciousness can be fully revealed. And that's the creation of the seventh universe, where we no longer need to go cycling back and forth between yugas, between darkness and light. We just enter into this spiral that continues on forever, this creative spiral that has no end and no limits. And we have no end and no limits. Our highest potential, which is latent within our genes, becomes alive and becomes, um, it's like what Sri Aurobindo referred to as the divine human and then the Gnostic human. It's like this is what Jesus and masters like him were manifesting. They were an example of this Gnostic human. There's no longer limited to one person. It's all of us entering into that field. And it's the morphogenetic field, like any other morphogenetic field. Once you enter into that field, there's a massive ripple out. And before you know it, the critical mass has been reached, and we've all transmuted into a new biological organism. Um,
It's very exciting, and as I understand it, Kiara, this is the first time we've attempted to do this in our physicality
yes.
embodied. And it was, to be honest, it was only recently I was on a beautiful shamanic retreat in France with just a magic bubble. And I really, there, where I could take time away from the screen, I really got the sense of this physical embodiment of we are New Earth.
Mm,
We are embodying
mm,
love. We are embodying peace. We're embodying gratitude and compassion. We physically are New Earth. It's not out there. We produce it out
yeah,
there
that's
because
what
of our
alchemy is
frequency. But
about. Yeah. As above, so below, as within, so without.
yeah, but it was
Ah,
palpable that I felt it kind of internally. And it was very interesting being with Veda Austin for 4 days last week because
yeah.
she was showing, and she's
Mm,
showing publicly now in her webinars that she's picking up in water. Um, and in fact, the last interview I had with her, she was showing these slides of her crystallography that look like codes of creation. They
mm,
look very similar to Egyptian hieroglyphs.
yeah.
And so, are these new codes of creation that look incredibly coherent,
Mm,
that are part of our physical rebirthing of ourselves, of the earth, of all the creatures, and ultimately the entire galaxy?
mm.
Is this the physical upgrade which she's seeing in her crystallography?
Yeah, I feel that. I've felt more and more of this. It's like the bridging between individual identity and planetary identity. And at that point, there's like um, a crystalline structure or a crystalline matrix that begins to activate. And I can actually sense that and feel that in the pineal gland, in the third eye. And then moving out into solar identity and connecting with the whole solar system as a unit, as a single organism, which is also then connected with the galactic identity and going on beyond to the universal, the cosmic, the divine self. And fractally, it's all the same.
Yeah.
And I think we're recognizing that more and more. And this, I think, is part of how we emerge into the new species. Because the new species is not about separateness. It's not about me in here and you out there. It's about experiencing myself as you, becoming you, coming back into me, and seeing how there is only unity within diversity in a way that we haven't experienced before. And the layers of mind beyond the rational mind, beyond the surface mind, there's so much there which we're now beginning to grasp and encounter directly within. And I think this is part of the unfolding of our divinity, these siddhis that are coming alive now. And this is part of our new species. So,
Yes, it's beautiful. We are all getting a stronger sense of one consciousness. We are all
mm,
divine sparks of one consciousness, and it's the only way we're going to get out of this kind of crazy "I'm right, you're wrong," "I'm left,
mm,
you're right," "I'm red, you're blue," or
yeah,
whatever the prevailing
mm,
polarization is.
yeah,
The only way to get beyond that is to start to get this sense of
mm,
we are part of one consciousness. We are thoughts in the mind of God, as it
mm,
were.
mm. Yeah,
So talk. Yeah, sorry, Kiara, go on.
in the Hindu system, they talk about this veil, the veil of Maya. And this veil is like, that's how we enter into duality. We pretend that this outer reality is real in itself. That's shredding to pieces now. And it's being revealed as Leela, which is the play of consciousness, experiencing itself in its creative beauty and dancing creation alive. So rather than being a limiting veil, we're entering into this play of consciousness as Leela, where there's infinity of creation possible. And, it's so joyful, so exciting to be able to begin to grasp that and then bring that in as soul embodied presence. Um, so maybe this is something we can talk about. It's like, what is this next humanity, the Homo luminous, and how do we actually break through into this consciousness collectively?
Yeah, I mean, I know you will have many thoughts on this yourself, Kiara, but the
Mm,
closest I can get to it is the Lemurians. I think they were the most beautiful civilization that
mm,
existed that we're aware of. And as I understand it, they lived largely in their light body. They were connected to the earth on a silver cord. They didn't eat very much or very often. They didn't kill to eat.
mm,
They operated telepathically, so they could read each other's energy. So it was impossible to be deceptive or dishonest because people could just,
mm,
the other beings could just read you. And their healing ability was very strong. Their healing temples were built on the top of mountains, so that's where the strongest energy vortex was. And as I understand, they were just very simple kind of poles covered in canvas but studded with crystals, and they healed very much using crystals, but everything was in harmony. They were very conscious of keeping that harmonious balance
mm,
with nature in all of its forms, respecting every living being, never damaging, never harming. And so it was a very beautiful high frequency civilization, but much less dense than we currently
mm.
have. And
Yeah.
and my sense is, and I'm seeing it in people more and more, that, and people are feeling it. I'm sure they write to you and they write to me all the time, and I'm sure you're feeling it, that there's this sense of greater psychic sensitivity, tuning into our dreams, greater sense of telepathy, stronger healing ability if you're working as a healer,
Mm.
and just a sense of being able to feel where other people are at
Yes.
in a much more empathetic way than we ever did
Mm.
before. You don't have to ask them; you can just feel into them
Become
and know
them.
where they're at. And this sense of the crystalline, I think, is coming in very, very rapidly. But what's your feeling about that? Because we're at the end of some very big cycles as well in terms of the Yuga cycle
Yeah.
as well, Kiara.
That the yoga cycles tie into this directly. So you're familiar with Bibhu Sen Mishra
Yeah.
and his work. He's a good friend of mine too. And we went to Kashmir together um, earlier this year. And it was fascinating to explore how the yugas tie into geographical locations and then ripple out into ancient portals to create new realities.
Wow.
What I understand about the yugas is that the descending cycle, so starting with Satyuga, the age of light, descending into Treta Yuga, then Dwapara Yuga, and then Kali Yuga. So the transition, so Treta Yuga was the frequency uh, beyond the density of physical form, which the Lemurians were able to manifest. Then, at the beginning of the descending uh, movement from Dwapara Yuga into Kali Yuga, that's the fall. That's when Atlantis fell, the
Oh,
last
wow.
Atlantis, the breakup of that entire civilization, and the collapse of these abilities. We were able to build these extraordinary structures, the pyramids, all the massive temples, through sound, through light, through intention, through psychic telepathic ability. Uh, and that we lost that at that point. And then the cycle of Kali Yuga, the density, the inertia. And then now, the end of the Kali Yuga, earlier this year, spring equinox, moving into Dwapara Yuga. So it's the ascending cycle now. So now we begin to return to multidimensionality. We begin to return to who we truly are by releasing the veils, these fourth dimensional subconscious veils of trauma and collective ancestral um, pain, and leave that density behind. And we can talk about how exactly that happens through the magnetic reversal. But then once that fourth density or fourth dimensional density is cleared, that unconscious trauma is cleared through the magnetic reversal, then we can move collectively, easily into a fifth dimensional reality where we begin to experience matter differently. And there's not so much of a veil between spirit and body, mind and heart, and all of those dualities. So, um, and I think your intuition about this all can happen very quickly. It doesn't have to stretch out into decades and centuries and millennia. Once we reach that critical mass,
Yeah,
everything can happen instantly.
yeah,
And
I
we're on
really agree
the
with that.
edge.
I really agree with that. And I think the multidimensionality, Kiara, I very much see as Uranus in Gemini. Because Gemini is connected to our neural networks, and it's mutable air, so it's divergent. And the best image I have is blowing the spores from a dandelion, and
Mm.
everything goes in different directions. So
Yeah,
it's a divergent air energy.
yeah,
So in the past, it's been very linked to light and to our consciousness in terms of those neural networks. And so with Uranus there as it's the ignition point for
mm,
that,
mm,
I think we are rapidly going to get into our multidimensionality. And
mm.
also, Greg Braden and Chiron have been talking about the reappearance of our 24th chromosome after 200,000 years.
Yeah,
That 200,000 years ago, that chromosome 2 and chromosome 7 were spliced together to leave us with 23 chromosomes. It made us more human, but less multidimensional. We're turning that around now.
yeah,
And everything about the astrology is now fast. The outer planets are moving into air and fire that are
mm,
fast. They're not
mm.
water and earth, which are
Yeah,
slow.
the earth element
Yeah,
anymore.
it's
Well, we have to
fast.
go through the earth, Uranus moving through Taurus and really struggling to find its place.
Yeah,
Finally breaking through, and now we're in Aries and things can move very quickly.
yeah, yeah.
Powerfully.
Aries, Gemini is fast, and it's in a fast-moving sign ruled by Mercury.
Mm,
Everything is quick. Pluto's in Aquarius, another air sign ruled by Uranus. So everything is quick, and also I think going forwards, we are going to be dealing with the invisible in
mm,
a much bigger way than we ever have because everything is just air, really.
mm,
And we've just thought of this as nothing. But we are going to start to understand so much more about plasma physics, our
mm,
thoughts, and our state of being, and how all these invisible things that we call our energy
mm.
are absolutely vital in terms of how we create our reality.
And ether in the Ayurvedic system, ether is recognized as one of the five elements that creates air and fire and water and earth. So it's part of the same spectrum of
Yeah,
elemental consciousness. And I think this is when Sri Aurobindo and the mother speak about the transformation of matter, what they're referring to is the creation of true matter, which is different from physical matter. And true matter is much more plastic, it's much more supple, permeable, malleable. Consciousness can move through true matter very quickly. The density isn't what we experience today. And this is also part of the Yuga cycle. As you move from Kali Yuga, which is inertia and density, to Dwapara Yuga, we're actually moving into fluidity and ether. And then the further up we go into Treta Yuga and then Satya Yuga, and we move into that plasma cosmology where everything is a fractal reflection of everything. And we experience that in consciousness.
Wow. So you feel that this is going to happen quickly too, Kiara? And also, do you feel that we are almost in part going to rebirth Lemuria? Two questions there.
Yeah, good question. I think it's both. So it's like we're going through a birth canal. So
Yeah.
in a sense, it's going to be very, very quick. It's like, we are going through the labor pains. It's taken a long time. We've gone through the gestation. We've come right out into birthing. And then the birth itself can be very powerful, very sudden. That's Uranian, that's Pluto. You emerge, you come out, that's the Saturnian quality. You take your first breath. And I think this is where we're going in this next 2, 3 years. I think that's going to be somehow connected with this magnetic reversal,
Yeah.
somehow connected also to solar micronova or solar flash, as it's sometimes called, somehow connected also to a galactic superwave coming in from the center of our galaxy. All of these are similar cycles. And this is where, going back to Sedna, Sedna is 11,400 years. The periodicity of a magnetic reversal, according to Robert Felix, is 11,500 years.
Wow,
Um,
that's really
so,
interesting.
yeah, so it's like these galactic cycles all merge together. Paul Laviolette, he connected the galactic superwave with solar micronova with geomagnetic reversal. So it's possible that all these cycles are linked together, and Sedna is the timing key.
Wow.
So now Sedna conjuncting Uranus, massive, instant, powerful, revolutionary transformation. It's like the blink of an eye and is born. It's like the last um, um, labor um,
Push.
conjunctions, the push, and your crowning. That crowning, I think, is happening right now. Before,
I think we're in process. I think we are absolutely, I agree with you, in process. And
yeah.
what's fascinating is the geomagnetics of our Earth are more volatile and unstable than we've ever known them, partly because of all the satellites orbiting, many thousands of them, and
Mm.
they're very they're all metallic. They're very heavy, about 14 kilos each, and they attract a lot of the electrical energy. So our Earth is also more electrified than it's ever been before. And this is an experiment. It's unprecedented. We don't know what the effect is, but inevitably, because everything's connected, that's connecting down to us as humans and the inner core of the Earth, etc. So we're in a period of immense volatility and much greater seismic activity.
Yes.
I think going forwards, Uranus having shifted sign, and it's going to shift back into Taurus as we know on the 8th of November. But I'm seeing a lot happening around Asia, Indonesia, Japan, those areas,
Fire.
and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so all of those things you talk about are entirely possible, stroke probable.
Mm.
And it's
And
interesting, if I'm just looking at the planetary configuration that I was mentioning a moment ago, it becomes at its most exact, because they've all got different orbital speeds. It becomes at its most exact in July next year, about
Mhm.
mid July next year. and they kind of bit higgledy-piggledy and shuffle about, because really from now till the end of 2027 they are all within that configuration that I've talked about, but they probably become at their most exact in July next year.
Okay. Yeah, and that's also the peak of the solar cycle,
Yes,
its current solar cycle.
yes,
So
25. Yeah,
it's very possible that that could be a trigger,
yeah,
of some sort.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's what I was feeling earlier, that this could be, we are in this window of birth.
yeah.
But what's the precise moment? And maybe we don't need to know, maybe we cannot know. Maybe it depends on our collective intentions and state of being. But it feels like July of next year with this conjunction coming up could well be the crowning moment.
Yes, and I like what you say, Kiara, about well, firstly, I very much think we are co-creating this, so it is dependent on collective consciousness, because we're not just victims of all of this. We're co-creating it, and we can modify the extremes, I feel, to some extent, of how it's going to express. We can make it more gentle, more peaceful. I very much agree with you with that as well. So we're playing our part with that. But if we look back to the massive CME that happened in September 1859 with the Carrington event that fry the elementary telegraph system, then also we had Uranus in Gemini then.
You know, Pam, I'm wondering if that might be a prelude again this time. Because somehow it's like we're so dependent on technology. Our safety, our security is in technology, it's outside of us. And somehow, and that's the military industrial complex is all tied into technology, the computer systems, the power systems, the transportation systems, the banking systems, everything is tied into this. It's a patriarchal world order that needs to somehow let go and collapse as part of this transformational process. And it could be that just before the 3 days of darkness or the geomagnetic reversal, just before this birthing, that we might experience a Carrington event.
Yeah,
And
that's entirely. Oh, it's very, very possible.
yeah,
Very, very possible.
it's also because the weakening um, geomagnetic field allows for even a moderate solar flare
Yeah.
to break through the Van Allen belts and create havoc. So we
And
don't
also,
need a
of course,
major. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, sorry. And also, of course, Uranus in Gemini is disruption in
Hmm.
communication, disruption in the internet, cutouts, power outages. That's very much Uranus as a kind of surge of energy. It's never linear or smooth in Gemini. And so I think we're going to see more of them, more aviation disruption. So if the internet has been our training wheels for what will ultimately become telepathic, we may be forced into that if the current systems in certain geographies aren't working in the way they have so reliably.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's go to another theme. I mean, I could talk with you forever. I'm also noticing that linear time is moving quicker than I thought. Um, so this whole idea of the geomagnetic reversal. And this is exciting to me. I know we're very close to it. Those who can track this and see how the confluence of weakening magnetic fields and the actual shift of the axis of the magnetic north and south. It's you can um, track this and conjecture when exactly the actual 0 point might happen. So there's a moment coming as these fields collapse. We're not just, it's not just a simple reversal of its magnetic polarities. It's actually a 90-degree phase shift. I won't go into that in detail. But what this means is that as we come close to 0 point, there's a null point that's created. All of our bodies are linked with the Earth's magnetic field. So we are our physical, etheric, emotional, mental, causal bodies. And not just humans, all creatures, and not just creatures on the Earth, but Earth herself. She has her own bodies, her own systems, held together. All these bodies are held together through magnetic fields. So, what happens when that field collapses? And one interesting finding is that um, scientists have noticed that with near death experiences, or even death experiences, what happens is that when the heart stops, there's a spike of DMT in the pineal, and that spike is what allows the soul to actually move out and enter
Right.
into the higher dimensional worlds. It's the same kind of DMT spike that people experience with ayahuasca or other plant medicines. So, the other interesting finding, there's another way that this DMT spike can be activated. So, the heart stopping, death or near death, or if the geomagnetic field of the Earth collapsed. Because
Well,
this,
fascinating.
the Merkaba is the higher dimensional magnetic field which holds all these bodies together. And when the Earth's magnetic field collapses, that Merkaba similarly also collapses or weakens to the point that the soul is not able to be magnetized in these five or four bodies anymore. So the soul is free. It moves out. It goes back into its causal dimension. And then when the reversal completes itself, so what I've been noticing or researching is that this geomagnetic reversal could well be connected with what the ancients called the 3 days of darkness, which is an actual event. It's not metaphorical. Um, and it's a very short term event. It's possibly the last phase of this magnetic reversal. This is the actual collapse of the Earth's magnetic field and its reorientation at a 90-degree or 180-degree phase shift, depending on the kind of reversal it would be. So, in that moment, there's a reset. The soul can reconnect through all the bodies, embody itself in a way that hasn't been possible before because of that. Um, it's like a reset where the entire structure, the unconscious structure of human duality is released. So we start over with a clean slate without the conditioning, the programming that we come into at birth, which is ancestral, which is racial. It goes back at least 12,000 years since our entry into Kali Yuga. So at that point, there's a reset and it happens so quickly. That's the birthing, that's the crowning, my senses. And then as the reorientation happens, as we relaunch a new civilization, that's when we can actually um, enter a whole new cycle of evolution. So this is the birth of the new human, the new earth, the new cosmos, um, new abilities, new potentials. Many children are beginning to manifest this already.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
we are dropping the veils. We're entering into this dance where spirit and matter become one, where the I am presence moves through human form without veils separating them from each other. So, this to me is the most exciting part of it. And then how long it takes for us to grow to maturity, you don't know. But the birthing is the most important thing. You're not aborting this time. That's over. That potential is done. You know,
Yeah,
that.
I really agree. You know, as you say, Kiara, it could take years and years and years, but it doesn't matter. We've jumped form. We've gone through the metamorphosis. You know, the different form, the new birth,
Yeah.
and my strong sense is that that is likely to happen between now and 2027. I know many people are talking about, you know, the golden age was already always said to be 2032 or 2040 or whatever. But this particular configuration of planets, if I'm just looking at it astrologically, is from now till 2027, and it's most exact in 2026. And also, what you were talking about, the magnetic reversal. My understanding is that the magnetic field of the Earth becomes weaker at the
Mm.
equinoxes and the solstices,
Oh,
particularly the Aries equinox.
okay.
It's called the Russell-McFerrin effect, and it's the Aries equinox where it becomes particularly weak. And so that could be another,
That could
pivot
be a
point
trigger point. Yeah, yeah.
looking at. But I also feel very strongly, it's something that Ann Tucker, an American lady who
Mm.
channels the angels have said absolutely consistently and repeatedly
Mm.
that we're going to have 3 days of darkness. They've talked about going into a cocoon, and they've
Mm.
talked about the shift in consciousness when we come out. And they have been, she's written a whole book on it, as well as having weekly channelings and messages about it.
Oh, I need to talk with her.
Yeah, yeah, I have, yeah, she's a friend of mine, so
Yeah.
we've had discussions about it. So, but you should talk with her too because it's so in line with what you are seeing,
Mm.
and yeah, I think we are in that period where
Yeah.
it could happen right now.
I agree with you, Pam. At first I wasn't sure. I felt like it's like we went through Y2K, we went through 2012, and it's like, we put too much focus on dates, and then that doesn't happen. So I've been a bit reluctant to commit myself to a date or even a window. And then the more I see how things are coming into place and the acceleration is taking place, and the shift of dimensionality is happening. We're rapidly moving into multidimensional um, creation. It's like timelines are bifurcating and reconvening. New possibilities are emerging. The supramental world is blossoming. And the supramental consciousness is that creator consciousness, which we've been awaiting for a long, long time. It's happening. Um, this is like ever since I was a child, I felt like, what am I doing on this earth, on this planet? I don't belong here. It's too dense. It's too alien to how I perceive things to be. And then now it's like it's so it's such a privilege to be here. It's such a privilege to participate in this grand chrysalis awakening. And
We are,
I think it is. This is the window. Um, if
and
not,
we are the bridge people. We are the
we are
bridge
the bridge
people.
people. Yes.
Yeah, who are co-creating it, and it's very interesting this whole issue of time, Kiara, because as an astrologer, people always come to you with the question when.
Yeah.
When am I going to get married? When am I going to have a baby? When is this huge thing for humanity going to
Yeah.
happen? But as we move through this, I think linear time is going to disappear. It's just going to
Yeah.
dissolve, and it's going to
Yeah.
be all about the now, dropping into the now. There won't be a sense of past and future to the same degree as there's been up to now. And so I don't know what that's going to do to astrology, and I can retire then at that point. But
Well,
it's
then you
going to be
have quantum astrology. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be living in the now, isn't it? It's going to be
Yeah.
a whole new kind of
Yeah.
astrology. It's going to be living in the now. That's the only place of power you have. If
Mm.
you're fretting about the future and worrying about the past, you're leaking power. It's
Mm.
now. And Uranus is very much in the moment. It's
Mm.
very much about being in the moment.
Yeah. So our current astrology has to do with the human or planetary identity. Now, what if our identity expanded to become solar or galactic? Astrology would change. Our
I
orientation.
think that's where it's headed. Yeah, I think that's where it's headed. Absolutely. Because we're discovering planets further and further out in the cosmos because we have better cameras. I mean, a dwarf planet was discovered just 2 weeks ago. It has a 25,000 year orbit, and it was discovered by a dark energy camera. It doesn't even have a name, it just has a number. But
Hmm.
because the telescopes are stronger, and that's equally true of going down into the earth and what's been discovered under the pyramids, of course, all of that. But the in here and the out there, we're going further. And so, yes, absolutely, a galactic cosmic astrology is going to be born in a much, much bigger way. Everything, but that's also reflecting the expansion in our consciousness because those things can't happen without the expansion in our consciousness because it's just a mirror. It's
Yeah.
a mirror of the expansion we're experiencing.
And it's interesting, this dwarf planet. this nameless planet, or whatever it's called. Um, the 25,000 year is very similar to the 24,000 year cycle of the yugas, the cycle of the galactic superwave, the cycle of geomagnetic reversals, the cycle of the solar micronova. It's like a cosmic clock cycle. And maybe this is the timekeeper. And maybe it's nameless because it's beyond naming. It's that infinite source consciousness.
Yeah, and pretty much double Sedna's orbit too.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And usually there are these double cycles.
Yeah,
So, you cross over like as this galactic superwave comes through, it moves through one side of the galactic sheet and then the other side. So it's like uh, what's it called? A sine wave. Same thing with the yugas. There's a sine wave that gets created in the ascending and the descending cycles. So it doesn't surprise me. And now this like at the next sign, it's like, all right, why is this particular planet being discovered now as we prepare for this birthing window?
yeah, yeah. It's there are going to be so many new discoveries, I think, not only in the cosmos but in the deep earth and under the sea, and the inner earth beings and all of those ancient civilizations that are so far ahead of us.
Yeah.
You know, we're the barbarians in all of this.
Oh, but we're waking up so quickly now. Um,
Wonderful.
so Pam, I'm aware that we're coming close to our time. Do we have time to do a meditation?
Yeah, that'd be beautiful, Kiara. I'd love you to lead that if you're happy to do that,
Okay,
because I know
sure.
you do
Okay.
that a lot.
All right. Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do is just call on the planetary energies that we are encountering now. Today in particular, as Uranus moves into Gemini, conjuncting Sedna, trining Pluto in Aquarius, sextiling Neptune and Saturn in Aries, this whole configuration, and then there's Home, and it's a vibrating living network that connects all things together. So we call on these planetary energies. It's the configuration of birthing. It's a divine intelligence moving through humans, through the collective consciousness, into that dormant gene, whichever it's gene 7, gene 23, that needs to be reawakened. And this is that trigger point that we're experiencing now. Cosmic energies entering into the Earth's atmosphere, cosmic rays, divine fire, blazing and blasting through resistance, holding and integrating the opposites. And as that happens, we dissolve our separate identities. We find ourselves connecting with a planetary identity. We connect with the heart of Gaia, a living, organic consciousness that's here to communicate, that's here to express, that's here to birth itself. We are her nervous system, her neurons, and through our intentions and our active participation, we become midwives for this birthing. And so, as we collectively enter into this window of new birth, we invite the participation of all creatures that inhabit this planet, the ocean swimmers, the earth walkers, the wind flyers, the mycelium beneath the trees, the virus and bacterial kingdoms that support our evolution in ways that are invisible to us. Elemental beings and angelic beings, masters and saints across time, galactic consciousness, star travelers, all here participating in this birthing. Not just a planetary birth, a galactic birth, a new experiment in time and space, the dissolving of these veils that separate us from ourselves. So we invite these energies to move through us now. To awaken through us now. We give so much gratitude to the Great Mother of all things, Shakti, along with Shiva, that stillness at the heart of all things, and that oscillation between form and formlessness that we are. Engage in this every single moment, millions of times every moment. And we remember now who we are. We birth ourselves as a planetary consciousness now. What a gift to be here. During this time of magnetic reversal, these 3 days of darkness, this activation of a new species. A new organic planetary species as well. So those who are listening, those who are participating across dimensions, across time, we join in together. This is our creation. We are giving birth to ourselves, through ourselves. Such a paradox, but so real. And so much gratitude for this moment, for this time with Pam. It's such a beautiful muse for astrological consciousness to speak through. Thank you for your service and for holding this promise of birthing. And Pam, is there anything you'd like to say about how people might reach you? I mean, it's so obvious. People just go to pamgregory.com or your YouTube channels. Anything else?
Those are the main things. pamgregory.com, YouTube, Pam Gregory Official on YouTube. That's it. I'm pouring all of my energy into videos at the moment because that's the fastest way I can get to a lot of people to support people going through this transition. But
Wow.
thank you for that beautiful meditation, Kiara. It was really, really lovely.
Mm.
Very fine, very, very fine energy. And
Thank you.
thank you.
And I also want to inform people that Pam also does daily meditations. You want to say anything about that?
Um, they are very, very simple. It was just an idea I had with no Zoom, no tech, that they are every evening at 7 p.m. UK time, 15 minutes for free. And you can get the details of that idea on my YouTube channel. I have a video called Sunday Meditation, which explains it. But essentially, you're just joining energetically at whatever your time zone is. If you're able to, that links to 7 p.m. And if you can't, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, have the intention that you're linking with that group energy, because it's the group energy that magnifies our intention. And the overriding mantra we use for that is we're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love.
Mhm. I hope.
And
Well,
I
thank
think that
you
says it
again.
all creatures.
Yeah. So I'll stop the recording and then maybe we could hang out for a minute
Yeah,
afterwards.